welcome back, folks, to another talk back for Level 2 lessons. Today we are on Level 2 Lesson 26, Consultations and Escalations, and I'm looking at the wrong monitor again. I even put my notes on the right monitor so I can look the right direction, and yet I cannot. How is everyone doing? As always, if folks have questions, oh boy. For those of you watching later on YouTube, I don't even ask if anyone has any questions. And there's just a block of text larger than my entire chat screen of a question from Hedkin. So, based on last known information, how last known information works for Annihilator versus Clone, and Shadows of the Galaxy, Han Leader on Reckless Gunslinger versus Stolen Landspeeder, can last known information be used to determine what unit a defeated upgrade was attached to? For example, if we play Darth Maul's lightsaber, which has, when played, attached unit is Darth Maul, you can attack with it, I believe. On Darth Maul, while another copy of Darth Maul's lightsaber is already attached to another unit, and we choose to defeat the new upgrade, does Darth Maul still get the attack, and why? For reference, Darth Maul's lightsaber says attached to a friendly non-vehicle unit. When played, if attached unit is Darth Maul, you may attack with him. For this attack, he gains Overwhelm and can't attack bases, and gives +4/+2. So, my understanding of last known information, which has been not perfect in the past, says that you can. Because last known information checks for reference information. And so it's not what abilities does the card have, but it is, okay, when I was in play, what was I attached to? And I think it works for abilities that are trying to resolve. So once an ability triggers, I believe it is generally independent of its source, which is to say, it will trigger and it will resolve even if something happens to the unit in question. I think a good example of this is, we have our good friends Akbar and I think it's both Akbar and Yularen from Spark of Rebellion. So Admiral Akbar has, when played, you may deal damage to a unit equal to number of units you control in its arena. You control one Admiral Akbar, you play a second Admiral Akbar, you defeat one to the uniqueness rule. The when played ability will still resolve. And that doesn't use last known information. It doesn't look to see how many units you had in play when it triggered. It only looks to see how many you had when it resolved, because that information is still accessible when it resolves. However, if you defeat the new Admiral Akbar, its ability will still resolve, even though Admiral Akbar is in your discard. Similarly, Yularen, again from Spark of Rebellion, who says when you play a command unit, including this one, heal 1 damage from your base. If you control a Colonel Yularen, you play a second Colonel Yularen. Uniqueness rule applies. You defeat one of them. We're going to say we defeat the new one again, because it's a little bit spicier that way. You have 2 Colonel Yularen triggers. Both of them will resolve appropriately. So, we have evidence that when played triggers can resolve from discard. So we can still try and resolve Darth Maul's lightsaber. Let's just pull up the exact text on the lightsaber. So, when played, if attached unit is Darth Maul, you may attack with him. For this attack, he gains Overwhelm and can't attack bases. I think this is an example where we do use last known information, because there is no attached unit, and the card wants to know that, and it is reference. I think it is referenceable. However, this is also an open clarification that we have sent over to Ryan and the team over at FFG. I recognize that there is some contention on that, but my understanding is, yeah, you get the attack. But I'm not positive. We have very few situations, relatively speaking, that use last known information. And so we are still, as a community, and I think with the devs, figuring out exactly what last known information is supposed to capture and what it's not supposed to capture. I know I was surprised by last known information not capturing targeting computer, the upgrade from jump to light speed. The way it works in Star Wars is different than how it works in other TCGs, which is to be expected because Star Wars is a different game. However, folks who come in with experience from other games are like, well, I expect it to work like this, and it works very similarly. It fulfills a very similar function and has the same name, but functions slightly differently. And so I think one of the reasons it is difficult to define is because it is being left somewhat broad and vague. This is speculation on my part, but being somewhat broad on purpose so the designers can fit in the things that they want to fit in. Right. As Cascade2244 says, my gut is that last known information is only required when asked for. Maul Saber asks for information that it currently does not have, but had previously, whereas Target Computer doesn't ever ask which player gets to assign the indirect damage when you're assigning indirect damage. And I think that is a good explanation because we're talking about, again, last known information is for reference purposes. But a lot of that is speculation because I'm not one of the designers and I don't know what the final answer is. They have the question in their hands. They'll get back to us when they get back to us, along with several other questions on updates. Oh, and I can see the camera bouncing just a little bit. We're going to try and keep that from happening, but I think it's going to continue to happen. Cool. Any other questions before we get on with the lesson? We might be starting in an efficient and timely manner as opposed to last time. I just need to figure out how to better stabilize this desk. Because it's the same desk and camera that we had previously. I think it's just a slightly bouncier floor or slightly more angled floor. We're gonna maybe it's the stability of the monitor that we're resting it on. I don't know. The other monitor is more stable than this one. But I want to have the spaceships in the background. So I'm going to live with the bouncy camera. I think I have nice original hardwood flooring in here from 1900. So it's not laminate flooring. So FFG clarified on stream today that Third Sister doesn't give a unit hidden permanently. It's supposed to have for this phase. Can we assume the same is true of Falcon? I was told to expect errata for Third Sister, and some other cards. I'm pulling up. Let me see what my conversation had. There were a couple other cards that had errata for persistent abilities that shouldn't be persistent. I am seeing Shadow Falcon is on my list, as well as Twilight of the Republic Dooku. These are just the ones that I have. This aren't official. So, McFerguson, this is for cards that gave keywords that had a short-term effect, like a one-round effect, but didn't specify that they, like, the ambush and the exploit from Dooku, I believe, and then hidden from Third Sister, I believe. Those, as printed, grant those keywords persistently. Like, they exist in perpetuity. I believe the intention is that they would not grant those keywords in perpetuity. It is exploit for the round, hidden for the round, ambush for the round, or phase. Phases probably makes more sense. I think there are maybe a couple other cards where it might make sense, but those are the ones that I have that FFG is aware of as potential concerns. That way, you minimize tracking issues of, did you play this with smuggle or not? Does this technically still have hidden? And my understanding is, like, me saying this is not official errata. Wait until you get official errata from FFG. My expectation is that it's coming sooner or later. Oh no, persistent ability is just colloquial for an ability that persists over rounds and phases. Not a new rules term, just me using technical language a little bit too casually, because that is how I speak. I was also told in the things that I've been told to expect, policy, I'm going to refresh the policy updates page while I'm here and check those links. Those are still 1.3 and 1.2. I've been told to expect the policy updates very soon. It might be a little bit of a delay, but again, I'm expecting them very soon. And I've been hitting refresh on the page all day today. Oh, Mad Dog Max, did you miss the tangent? No, I haven't said anything about the lesson other than the name of the lesson. We're still on the tangent. I think we're doing better than last time, but we're still on the tangent. Great. Wolfstrider, I think you are talking about something different than we are. So you're saying, I would say smuggle units wouldn't get hidden from Third Sister as you're not playing it for hand, but that's just your thoughts on it. So we're talking about on the unit side of Third Sister, it says, on attack, the next unit you play this phase gains hidden, period. And as printed, it is gains hidden forever. And so if you later play Legends of the Force, Dooku, it would have hidden forever, even though it only applies effectively for the round that it's in play. But if you play the Dooku, I think it's Dooku that says things that you have hidden, things you control that have hidden can't be attacked this phase. If you had on turn 3, or not turn 3, because that'd be very fast to get Third Sister out, but if you had given something hidden with Third Sister on her unit side early in the game, and then 10 turns later played a Dooku that would give that constant effect of units with hidden can't be attacked this phase, you would have to remember that that specific unit had that effect. And yeah, as McFerguson says, leader side can't work with smuggle. Unit side can. Unit side can also work with something like U-Wing reinforcements, playing cards out of your deck, or playing cards out of your discard, so like Palpatine's Return and that sort of thing. Morgan Elspeth also cares about keywords sticking around for a long period of time. Boba 2 from Shadows the Leader also cares about keywords, and just having keywords that don't matter cease to exist after they stop mattering when they are gained from abilities that are invisible just makes it easier for everybody to keep track of the game. There aren't a ton of things that temporarily grant keywords that only have an impact on one turn of the game. I think it's just Lando's Pride, Dooku, and I'm forgetting the card that we're talking about right in front of me, Third Sister. So that is... I'm expecting some errata at some point. I don't know if there will be any other errata. This is, again, technically functional errata. It's not going to really change the way how any of these cards are played. I don't think anybody has played Traitorous on a unit that was played with Dooku's ability that gave it Exploit so that it would get an additional point of power from their Boba Fett Daimyo. I don't think anybody was super worried about that. Like, getting those two things to interact with each other, not super common, with Morgan Elspeth caring more about keywords, and the more things we have that just care about any keyword, the more this sort of thing matters, and I think it just cleans up the game a little bit, despite being functional. Alrighty. Any more tangents? This was maybe a longer tangent than Tuesday, but it was also several... You asked several questions. Headkin says, I feel like "call me when it happens" is a phrase we all need to take to heart. That is super true. Yeah. Just, I think something that we need to accept, or that is very helpful to accept, is that, and this was something that I was talking with, I've mentioned in personal conversations with people, we have our general rules cases of questions, things that come up all the time. Crate Dragon. And any sort of interaction, that's just a straightforward rules case. Then you have edge cases, which are a little bit less common. That might be sort of like things with Chirrut surviving, because it comes up anytime anybody plays Chirrut, but nobody really plays Chirrut. Then you have corner cases, which come up with like questions of cards that people don't really play, and you need a couple of cards to do it. And then you have what I like to call non-Euclidean corner cases, which are when you need like 7 cards to create a scenario that is unplayable in any format, and nobody would ever play it, but it's just a neat rules thing that doesn't work. And those we don't need to worry about. No, don't need to worry about those. Mad Dog Max says, what's that purple lightsaber behind me? That is my curtains not overlapping, and so you can see outside. It's just daylight. It's not a lightsaber. It's just outside. It exists, and I'm sad that the curtains don't cover it up perfectly. But hey, given that it looks like a purple lightsaber, I can use it outside. What is that? That is just where the sun exists, and I don't like it, which is why I hide from it as best I can. The sun is like a giant round lightsaber. Oh boy. Yeah, I also do really appreciate how when I open the curtains, I could see outside, like I can see that there is green out there, but to y'all, it just looked like a white, like, block of light, like a loading screen in a video game, or like one of the doors that's just like, beyond here, you don't know what's happening. That really reminds me of like the Fallout doors, because they're just like, yeah, outside the door is just blinding light, you don't know what's in here. And we're going to just use that blinding as a load screen as you like dynamically open doors. But McFerguson asks a relevant question. Are we getting that card errata really soon, and or how do we rule granted keywords in the meantime? We don't have that errata yet, so rule those cards as printed. I don't have a timeline on that errata. I'll give Ryan a poke at some point being like, hey, I know that we're expecting that. But right now, the cards function in a very particular way, and it is a pain in the butt for players to track, but players should be tracking that information. Lethal Logicality says casual is intended, competitive is written. As written for both. Rules shouldn't be different. Like, policy being different between casual and competitive is reasonable, because it's about creating a tournament experience, cards should function the same at competitive and casual. Alrighty. Did I see any more questions as I was on various tangents? I think I'm all cut up on tangents. Oh, sorry, McFerguson. Thank you for the reminder. You did ask me what my favorite pizza was. I had an answer in my head. So my standby when I'm going to a new pizza place, it's just going to be pepperoni because pepperoni is always going to be good. There are a lot of excellent toppings to have on pizza. Oh boy, tangent on the tangent. Cascade 2244 says, is pineapple pizza okay? And why is the answer no? No, it's not okay. Or rather, it is okay. I do not like it. I don't like the acidity of I just don't like pineapple. A third tangent here. When I was a child, I begged my parents for what felt like years and was probably like a day because you don't have a concept of time when you're a foot tall. But I begged for so long to have a pineapple because pineapples look cool. They finally relented, got a pineapple. They start cutting it up. The first slice they take, I sneeze. And I determined at that moment in time, like, I'm 4 years old. I don't know what reality is. I determined that I'm allergic to pineapple. Just because when they cut into the pineapple, I sneezed. So, as a child, I decided I didn't like pineapple. As I got older and actually tried pineapple, I'm like, I'm not actually allergic. I just sneezed once when I was a kid. That's not how allergies work with food, really. I determined that I still didn't like it just because the acidity doesn't work for me. As for... So, pineapple and pizza, not for me. Favorite pizza, my default go-to is pepperoni, just because I like pepperoni, and it's nice and clean and straightforward. I had a great, Alfredo sauce with chicken, potatoes, and spinach years ago that I have not been able to, find again. There is a chain in the Northeast, Bertucci's, for those of you who are in the New England area of the United States. They had it on their menu once. I've been back to that same location. They didn't have it again. That was a fantastic pizza. Chicken, mushrooms, pepperoni, bacon. Those are all great things to throw on a pizza. I don't know. I'm pretty free with what makes a good pizza. I just don't want acidity on my pizza. If you put pickles on my pizza, we will come to blows. I have strong opinions about pickles, and most of the world disagrees with me. Alright. Now I'm all cut up on tangents. This is better tangent time than the last one. Oh boy. See, the nice thing about these tangents is we do get some new folks in chat engaging, and that makes the statistics look better. Headkin says, I missed the whole pickles and alls thing on the FFG stream earlier. I would have just been vilified because I do not like them. McFerguson, don't worry, I don't like any sort of pickled anything. Like pickled onions, no thank you. Just no, doesn't need to be cucumber based pickle. It's the brine that I don't like. No, there are no good things to pickle. There's none. Not a single. Alrighty. To the lesson, 25 minutes in. We're going to talk about consultations and escalations. Headkin, yeah, it's vinegar that I don't like. Except I like ketchup, but that's fake. Okay, on topic. So, consultations are one of the more important skills that you can develop as a judge. Knowing how to effectively talk to other judges about ongoing calls is incredibly helpful. Being able to do so in a timely and efficient manner, which to me is just very funny given the context of the conversation, again, incredibly helpful. So, one thing is, how do you begin to consult with another judge? The first step is recognizing that you want to consult with another judge in the middle of a call. what you should not do is just walk away from the table without saying anything to the players. If you're in front of the players, if you're in the middle of a conversation with players, things that you shouldn't do include walking away without telling them what you're doing, or just standing there silently. Always keep players up to date and informed of what you are generally. You don't need to walk through your entire thought process, but you can just be like, hold on a second, I just need to refer to the exact fix for this, or I have the fix, but I just want to double check the penalty, or the general understanding is this. However, there's a tricky thing here, which is this, and so I'm going to double check the rules to highlight that. Or I'm 99% sure this is something that I've answered a couple times before. However, this is a complicated one, and this does, like, my ruling here will change the outcome of the match, and so I'm just going to go consult with another judge. Or you can just say, hold on one moment, folks, I'm just going to consult with a colleague. Just saying, I'm going to go chat with somebody. Let them know that you're doing that. Let them know that they're going to get time extension for the time that you take away. Some people are like, I don't want you to leave. I just want you to give me a ruling so we don't get less time. And it's like, we're going to make sure you get all that time. Helps relieve that. Cascade 2244 asks, as a more senior judge, when and why do you think it is better to ask judges to basically do it themselves in a supportive way? It depends on the situation. I would prefer pretty much every time that the judge who initially took the call handles the call. I really don't like stepping in and taking over. However, I also recognize that the first few times you do something, you're just like, I don't even know how to do this. I don't know how to talk to players about performing a rewind, or I don't know how to explain this to a player because I've never seen it done in real life, and having one example would help me immensely. And so I'm very, very frequently, as Lethal Logicality says, they've been asked, do you feel comfortable doing this? I have asked people many, many times, are you comfortable issuing this game loss? Are you comfortable performing this rewind? Would you like me there with you as backup? Would you like me to do it? You want to balance several things, one of which is judge growth. Ideally, every judge learns how to do everything, and I shadow them on everything and tell every judge, like, we get all the experienced judges in the world, and every inexperienced judge has 7 shadows on every single call with a couple watching on, like, GoPros, and so they can get perfect feedback on every single call. That's unreasonable and also way too much pressure on the newer judges. And I do truly believe, for the vast majority of people, experience is the best teacher. Actually handling the call, dealing with the player being like, I don't think I deserve a game loss here, or I think the time extension should be different, or I don't like that fix. With you having to formulate the answers in real time and engage with the player directly, that just helps you grow so much more than me telling you what it is and then doing it without you shadowing me, or me doing it and you watching. However, me handling the call and you watching does teach you a lot, because you now have a real life experience. But you also have the player experience to consider. And I am not going to force a judge who's like, I don't think I'm going to give these players the optimal experience, it doesn't even need to be optimal. I don't want to make a judge who's like, I'm going to give these players a poor experience. It's not going to be a satisfactory experience. I know that I am not comfortable enough at this to give them a good experience. I need a little bit more experience myself to make sure that the players have a good time. And so it depends on, it's very case by case. Head, can you say judge fix puzzles might be a good idea? That is absolutely something that's on the to-do list. There's I want to create something like Judge Calls Live, where This is something that would be best suited for smaller meetups where we have like 10 or fewer people, maybe even like 5, where we have 2 people act as players. They play out a scenario. You can use draft chat for this because most of the time, like, the stuff that I want folks to get practice with is the normal day-to-day stuff, like, hey, Judge, last turn I attacked and we assigned the wrong damage. Or, hey, Judge, when drawing for turn, I accidentally picked up 3 cards instead of 2. Or when I was shuffling my opponent's deck, I dropped a card and saw a card in my opponent's deck. These things are all very straightforward. They're not super complicated in their premise. It's not like, oh, we're going to get you with some weird gotcha of how this, like, I don't even want to delve into, like, optional triggers or communication, that sort of thing. I want it to be very clear-cut. Both players agree on what happened. It's almost definition by the book. Wolfstrider says, cheesy 80s teaching videos for judges. I don't want to do the teaching. I mean, I do want to do teaching videos because it's better than just, like, the lectures that I'm doing. But I want to do it live, and so you have judges as your actors, a couple judges as spectators, and then a judge handles that call live. And our actors pretend that they are players and don't know the fix already. Or they're maybe even just judges who are players who don't know the fix. They're more casual tier judges who don't really need to worry about fixes as much because we get to be a little bit more hand-wavy at casual tier. And then as the judge goes through the call, either we pause at various points and have conversation about, let's talk about how you approach, let's talk about that question you asked, or you handle the whole call and then we spend like 5 or 10 minutes discussing it. But let's keep on tackling some questions. Yeah, so judge fix puzzles would be great. Creating, like, something that I do want to do that's on the plan, like, it's not a wish list, it is a thing that is going to happen, is at the tail end of the level 2 lessons, I'm going to go back and create like 2 to 4 policy questions or scenarios that include full board state, full communication, as examples of common and straightforward calls that you might get, like, I assigned the wrong damage, or I didn't pay enough resources for this, or I saw too many cards, that sort of thing, and just leave them as scenarios and be like, okay, how are you going to resolve this? Let's talk about it. Let's walk through all the things. And then have some that are left unanswered so you can think about them. Those take a lot more time to develop appropriately than a quick example of a player draws an extra card. What do we do? Because the context adds complexity, but it also adds value. It's just that in, like, the core lessons, I think the trade-off of time versus value isn't there, but having one lesson that's just focused on clean examples so you can get practice is super helpful. McFerguson, I'm not skipping your question. I'm going to swing back to it. Cascade2244 asks, is there scope to add a judge help channel on the Discord for big events where experienced judges can volunteer their time? Basically, it's a dedicated live call channel for judges on big events if the head judge team is occupied a long way away. Short answer, no. It's not that there isn't scope for it, but it's that I think it is not a good idea. If there's a call that the head judge wants escalated to them, if there's a call that they're like, this is something that I want to be involved in, I don't want to create a place where people can go, but a judge on the internet told me this. Judge calls at events should be handled by the judges at those events. The live call channels are there for judges who are soloing an event, and therefore don't have anybody to consult with, or somebody who's like head judge of planetary qualifier and is like, I don't know what to do, and I am the expert here. I do not want, I don't want judging from online to be an expectation. Furthermore, particularly for like these higher roles, create an expectation of judges volunteering their time is not something I want to do. Again, we believe that people should be compensated for the time that they put in. So, okay, I want to go back to McFerguson's question, though. So this is talk going back to somebody being like, I want you to take over this call. McFerguson is like, question is, does someone know the answer and lack confidence in it, or are they going to struggle to create a good experience with how they try to handle the issue? And again, like, something that I try to do when I'm in leadership roles is gauge this information. And some of it is, are you comfortable? And like, or I'm just like, hey, they're like, this is like, here's the ruling. I'm pretty sure this is right. And I'm like, that is correct. Do you actually need me? Like, you're correct. Do you want me to go tell the players your ruling, or do you want to tell the players your correct ruling? I probably won't be that flippant. Probably won't be that flippant in real life, but I might be, especially the more I know you, the more flippant I'm going to get, because I find that sass is a great teacher, at least for me, and for a lot of other people. I think for a lot of people, and again, you have to be very careful with this, you have to read the room, because being sassy can ruin somebody's day, but for a lot of people, just a little bit of, you know that you have this, why are you asking me the answer that you know is correct? That can just tell their brain, that reinforces in their brain that they do know this, and that they can go back and handle it. And sometimes having a very quick question and handling the Socratic, like handling judge interactions through the Socratic method is something that I find to be very valuable. Talking to judges and being like, okay, what do you want to do here? What do you think this is? Why do you think that? Where in the rules is that supported? I love doing that. I think that's super valuable. For live calls, sometimes I shortcut that and it's like, okay, this is a complicated situation. Do you want me to walk you through this, or do you just want me to handle it? Wolfstrider says, what would be the best option if two judges do not agree on a ruling, and by this happening causes more time to be lost for the players? And you're talking about two floor judges, not a leader or head judge. Get a leader or head judge. One of my default recommendations is, for a lot of things, like when I'm head judge, there are specific things that I want everybody to always consult on, sometimes with specific people. So for example, if you're going to be doing an investigation, appeal, or game loss, you need to consult with myself or another head judge, just period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If it is a rewind, card manipulation error, or reversing decisions call, I want you to consult with, generally I select team leads because they generally tend to skew more experienced. At some point, it might be, for these calls, consult with an L3 plus or consult with an L4 plus, and I might do level based once we have a robust enough program, and I can say these folks have been tested on this thoroughly and can answer any of these questions with ease. However, something that I do at events right now is, if you're ever uncertain, consult with another judge, and if the two of you disagree, come get me. Just find somebody that the two of you trust as a tiebreaker effectively and get tiebreaker. I've definitely had calls where Judge A is like, clearly the answer is A. Judge B is like, no, clearly the answer is B. They come to me and I'm like, all right, friends, so I have good news. Judge A, you're correct that Judge B is wrong. Judge B, you're also correct. Judge A is wrong. We're going to go with option C. But yeah, if two floor judges are disagreeing, if it feels like you're just going to go in circles, if you're just like, this is a matter of interpretation, not a matter of understanding, go get a head judge because that's your final authority at the event. If it's a matter of understanding, whoever took the call is the judge for that call. So if I take a call and I'm like, yep, Crate Dragon doesn't trigger, it's going to be defeated, and you come up to me and say, I'm pretty sure it does, and I'm like, no, clearly here it says this is my final ruling. That's my call. It is my responsibility to take care of that. And if I'm wrong and if I get appealed, that's on me. the judge who took the call gets to keep the call until they give it away. Judges should not be taking calls away from other judges. If you do see somebody saying something ludicrous and incorrect, like Crate Dragon doesn't trigger, or Cheer It dies, or Lurking TIE Phantom can be defeated that way, you can say, hey, I have a quick question for you. Can I talk to you away from the table? Pull them away from the table and say, hey, are you crazy? Here's the rules that say why you're wrong. Again, you want to be a little bit more polite than that. But the, can I talk to you away from the table? I think I might be missing something, is a great way to say, I need to talk to you away from the table. I believe something is going wrong here, but it doesn't undermine the other judge who needs to return to that table and then finish giving the ruling. If you say, I'm pretty sure you're wrong, then can we talk away from the table? You step away from the table, you have that conversation, and then the judge comes back and is like, nope, I'm right, I'm going to keep on doing it. The players are going to raise some big old eyebrows and be like, but that judge just said you were wrong. How are you so sure? There's going to be a little bit more pressure there. Whereas if it's just like, I might be wrong, I might be missing something, rather than you, the one who's actively handling the call, that is a healthier way to pull somebody out of a call. But something that I hope happens, so Wolfstrider says your concern is that some new judges that have never done anything like this before might be shy about asking. I hope that myself and the other head judges are approachable enough that you can come up to us and ask us questions, whether about live calls or other things. Frankly, this is one of the reasons I go on tangents. I think that this makes me a little bit more approachable by being, what's the word? A silly goose. I think silly goose is the appropriate descriptor for me very frequently. And I think that makes me just a little, like, if I'm always stoic and rigid and just the rules, always education. Mightstone12420 says human. No. Human isn't the right word to describe me. I don't think I'm a normal human. Silly goose seems better. But yeah, making me more human, more approachable, I think that's very key. I think that it's very important that leaders are approachable, because that allows you to approach them for consultations, for, hey, I gave a ruling and later discovered that I was incorrect. Like, that's so hugely impactful. Or just like, hey, I want a little bit of mentorship, that sort of thing. Please don't mind me as I turn on the fan because it is getting hot up here after I close the windows because of the rainstorm. Anyways. Wolfstrider562 says, feels more like, oh, you feel more like 3 raccoons in a trench coat. Here's a question. What's more dangerous? 3 raccoons in a trench coat, 3 Ewoks in a trench coat. I'm pretty sure it's the 3 Ewoks, because they have, like, I believe there's evidence of raccoons creating primitive tools, but they have the grabby hands, and Ewoks have grabby hands. I don't know. Anyways, consultations. So, as I was saying, if you're shadowing another judge on a call, looks like they're struggling, and they're about to say something incorrect, or already have said something incorrect, rather than taking a call from them, just pull them away from the table, being like, hey, I want to ask you a question. Am I missing something? Can you clarify something for me away from the table? Just anything of, away from the table, we need to talk. This process does allow the judge to save face. It allows them to maintain authority in front of judges. And so that's hugely important. Also, I just love the response to this question. Yes, Ewoks are basically bigger, more aggressive raccoons. I do think they are generally smarter, or not necessarily smarter, but more developed on a civilization level. Ketch is... So the problem with Ketch, and I love Ketch. I have a stuffed animal named Ketch. But Ketch is fictional. Kolot is the real Ewok who is sentient, like, intelligent enough to pilot. So I think Kolot is the main pilot, but the collection of Ewoks may go by Ketch. I love that raccoons are Earth Ewoks. In this trenchcoat scenario, do I have a Golden God-like looking droid with me? I don't know if you have Glenn Howerton dressed up as a droid with you. But, right, consultations. So, don't, with consultations, don't feel like you're a bad judge if you want to consult. Taking the extra 30 seconds, taking a minute, 2 minutes to cross the floor, talk to another judge, talk to the head judge to improve the quality and consistency of your rulings is incredibly valuable. As somebody who has a lot of experience judging, somebody who knows rules and policy very well, I consult on rulings at events frequently for rules and policy for all of the games that I judge, even the ones that I've been playing for multiple decades and have been judging for over a decade. I know that I don't know everything. If you think you know more than me, oh boy, we're going to talk about your ego for a moment. I hope that somebody does. I'm sure that there are people who do. But you should not feel bad consulting on rulings or asking for help. The head of the judge program does that. We'll talk about imposter syndrome at some point. I think that many judges feel imposter syndrome because you don't get to see all of the doubt that goes through everybody's heads as they're doing things. I'm not going to name names, but I know that several of the head judges at Galactic Championships feel like that's a role that, like, they feel like they've earned it, but also they feel like that it is definitely not something that they're a fit for. For me, it's going to be the largest event that I've been head judge of. I think the largest I've been a head judge or appeals judge for was 1,800 players. This is going to be 2,000. I've done a couple at like 1,200. It's still going to be the largest event I've ever been the head judge of. And so part of me is always going to be like, am I a good fit for this? Even after I do it a couple times, I'm definitely going to be checking in with people, talking with people about logistics, what you're trying to do. Consultations are super valuable. Now, when you have a live call and are seeking assistance and you want to consult, make it clear that it's a live call. I've had way too many calls. When somebody comes up to me, asks me a question, we just have a like good solid 5-10 minute conversation. Because I'm like, oh, they just wanted to know. Cool, let's chat. And then they're like, okay, cool, I'll go let the players know. And then I start screaming inside my head, please tell me if it's a live call immediately. Hey, this is a live call, rewind, live call, card manipulation error, live call, mistrigger that I'm a little bit confused about, live call, there's a combat damage discrepancy that I'm really struggling to figure out, right? Just start with live call, or this is hypothetical, or no longer live, this is closed, I just want to like go over how I presented. But always start like, is this a thing that is happening, a thing that happened that you just want to discuss, or something that is made up and might happen in the future. And then there's also like the category of future live call of like, hey, I foresee this problem, either logistics or rules coming up. How do we want to handle that? Like, and that's like, that allows the person to triage. If you come up to me and you're like, hey, I have a live call, I'm like, cool, I'm currently in the middle of a debrief of a previous call. I'm going to pause that and get back to you. Or if you're like, hey, I want to just like break down a call that I just finished. I'm like, cool, let me finish breaking down this call with this person, then I'll get to you. Some judges, and some of you are going to appreciate this, they like to signal that they have a live call by forming the letter L with their hand and then just putting it up to their forehead to make it clear to any judge looking at them that they have a live call. I don't know if that's correct. I don't know how mirroring works with Discord, but maybe don't do that. I mean, if you want to, if it makes you feel good about yourself, you can. But maybe don't. There's also something called the appeals dance, which is where you just kind of wave your arms wildly like you're a like wobbly airman thing, where you just do this, and that means I have an appeal, which is a great way to signal across a crowded convention hall a very specific piece of information. Yeah, wacky waving arm inflatable tube man. Exactly. Yes, the word's gone. But if you are a wacky waving arm inflatable tube person, that's something that a couple different TCGs have developed as I have an appeal, I need a head judge. It does a good job at communicating that information because there's no other reason to be the wacky waving arm inflatable tube man. However, it looks super unprofessional, and the extra 30 seconds it takes to walk across the hall and be like, hey, I have an appeal, that, to me, the trade-off for a professional appearance is worth it. Similarly, as a judge, you should not run. You should not shout. You should not call for a judge at a table that you are at. However, it is appropriate to call for a judge at a table that you are not able to address. So if you see 2 judge calls and you're like, there's one there, I'm taking this one, you can raise your hand, call for a judge, and just flag somebody towards the call that you're not taking. Similarly, just like another small best practice is when you are answering a call, raise your hand, and I like to wave my arm and just point at the players, because that a lot of times players will call for a judge and then look directly away from where you're coming, and so they don't see you. But if you're waving if your arm is up and your arm is waving, they are more likely to notice that movement because we're a predator species. They see the arm, they see a judge walking towards them and pointing at them. They're like, great, we have been attended to, we've been answered. This is a piece of knowledge that I got from somebody relatively late in my judge career of one of the most impactful things on the quality of a judge call is how long it takes from the players calling for a judge to them not getting an answer, not talking with the judge, but being recognized by the judge. And so if they call and I'm immediately pointing at them in seconds, they're happy, even if it takes me 30 seconds to get to them. 30 seconds would be a huge amount of time, but knowing that they are being taken care of, or if I have another call, I'm like, that call is 1, you are 2, and I just indicate 1, 2. This happens a little bit more frequently at smaller events where I have a smaller staff or I'm the only staff. I'm like, I'm taking care of them first, I'm coming to you second. They're like, cool, we know that somebody's going to take care of us. It's kind of like when you call a company and you get put on hold. If you get put on hold immediately, you're just like, this is the worst experience ever. If you get connected to a person, they're like, hey, very busy, I'm going to put you on hold for 5 or 10 minutes. You're like, oh, cool, I'll put the phone down for 5 or 10 minutes. Yeah. As Mightstone12420 says, manage call centers, time to answer is the largest factor of happiness. Yep. And time to answer isn't time to you beginning to address the issue. Time to answer is you beginning to engage with them in any way, shape, or form. It's just that a human has recognized me. Great, my problem will be solved. This is Robo Joe says, never thought the fact that we are a predator species would play into judge skills for Star Wars Unlimited. Oh boy, the amounts of information and the skills that are relevant to judging. Judges of the broader community, trading card games have a disproportionate quantity of their population as neurodiverse individuals. And among that group that is biased towards neurodiversity, there's a group that self-selects for caring about pedantry and minutia and rules that is even more neurodiverse. And so you're going to have people who have very specialized areas of knowledge. They're going to apply that in ways that are incredibly valuable. There's going to be so much information, knowledge, and experience. You're like, I didn't think that would be useful information. I mean, today we've already talked about how predator species, like understanding how predators work and understanding how call centers work, make you a better judge. One of the reasons I like judging is because it is just so collective in so many different skill sets, and like there's so many ways to constantly improve at it. And part of the reason that I want to constantly improve at it is because it's fun. Judging is something that brings me joy. Like, yeah, there are probably a lot of ways that I could like have improved at my job at Home Depot. Like, this information about time to answer and catching people's attention to help them out sooner probably would have been helpful at Home Depot, but I didn't care that much. Similarly, on the time to answer engaging with folks, if you see players, I don't shout, but I raise my voice as I approach them from like 5-10 feet away and say, howdy players, or hey folks, just to begin that verbal process, especially if they're not looking towards me, if they're looking around still, or if they're discussing, but their hands up and they're like, hey, so what are we doing here? Me saying, hey folks, what can I do for you as I'm closing, lets them know that I am coming. Something that some judges will do will just show up silently and then be behind somebody and just give that player a huge startle. Alrighty. MikeZone12420 says, this is why Aces looks at resumes for what you're doing in your life that connects to judging. Yep. And this is why, like, in a lot of things, I talk about, like, what are your outside skills? Particularly early on, I talked about, like, running, like, a soccer league or a football league, running, like, if you run, like, a poker game for your workmates or something like that, these sorts of things translate very directly to judging, but there are a lot of things that don't translate, like, aren't as obvious about translating to judging that still do translate to judging. And as we get further along, we're going to talk about self-evaluation and like qualities of judge and how you can improve. And you're going to start to, ideally, you're going to start to think about a lot of, for folks who are interested in being high-level judges and becoming true masters of the craft, you're going to think about everything you do differently. Like, I've changed the way that I stand because of judging. I'm just like, oh, if I change my body posture in this way, I'm a little bit more of an authoritative and reassuring presence as opposed to one that doesn't really care. However, sometimes I can also I can intentionally put off that presence of, I'm just here casually having fun. Headkin says, judging very much feels like my time working in a restaurant. 100%. Judging is, first and foremost, a customer service job that has a very high bar for specific knowledge that you need to have. It's kind of like being a sommelier. I don't know how to pronounce French root words, and so I mangle them. But a wine expert or somebody working at like a high-end restaurant, you need to have a lot of very specific information to be able to provide to folks because they're going to ask for it. But it is first and foremost a customer service job. Headkin, I'm confident that it's not some liar. I'm confident it's not that. Like 95% sure. Right. Going back to consultations. So when you are handling a call and you're looking for a consultation, just raise your hand to draw attention to you. It draws attention of players, but it also draws attention for judges. You find the judges, you say it's a live call. Then start with some amount of being specific. Like when you're talking with another judge, I'm consulting on card manipulation error, this is reversing decisions, and I'm 99% sure, but I just want to confirm, that sort of thing. Giving just some amount of context makes the process smoother because now the judge that you're consulting with knows what to look for. So, in addition to consultations, due to your own uncertainty, you just being like, hey, I want to double check this ruling or my understanding with somebody. There are some classes of infractions or calls where the head judge or your team lead will say, please consult on all of these calls, even if you believe you're 100% sure. The calls that I usually put into this category are ones where the fixes, generally, have a high potential for disrupting the game state significantly and potentially in an irreparable way, or the calls often result in appeals, and so I just want that consultation out of the way so that we have that information for when it's appealed. Mad Dog Max says, I think it's better to be right than to try to do it in your own and maybe miss something. Yep, exactly. That's why I asked for help with pronunciation of some liar. And sommelier and sommelier, yeah. We like those phonetic pronunciations. Mad Dog also adds, I just have to get out of the mode of preferring to check almost anything, making me look stupid. It doesn't make you look stupid. Asking to consult does not make you look stupid, especially if you consult and you're right. What it does do is it makes you look a little uncertain or maybe lacking confidence. But you know what I prefer? I prefer a judge who's right and not confident about it than a judge who is wrong and very confident about it. Like, that is 5,000 times out of 5,000, I'm going to pick the judge who is right and not confident about it. I will never once be like, yes, I would rather judges be very confidently wrong. Lethalogicality asks, are we allowed to take bets how many judges you are going to walk past to take a call at Galactics? So technically in policy, there's nothing against gambling right now. So it's not against policy. But yeah, that is one of my favorite things to do is... So a lot of head judges feel like they should not be taking calls because it is important for them to be available for appeals, investigations, game losses, that sort of thing. And they want to preserve the right to appeal. Two things. One, if the call is short, I can handle it and then move on and I'll be available in a minute or so for appeal, investigation, etc. And so it's not significant. Or if it is a significant call, I would have needed to get involved anyways, so it doesn't actually hinder the event. As to the other, the purpose of appeals is to make sure that the judge or the player gets an answer consistent with the ruling the head judge would give. And if I give players my ruling, they're going to get an answer consistent with the ruling that I would give, just by the very nature of me talking. It can make some players feel like, oh, I don't have this opportunity for appeal. Like, I don't think that this is right, but there is no recourse for me. And I still, if the player's showing doubt, I give them an opportunity to explain. I had an issue in the finals of a top 8 a while ago where I had sent everybody else home because there was no need for me to have 4 judges watching 2 players. And there was, I want to say a player had, I think it was failure to sideboard going into game 1 of the finals match. And I was like, this was for a different game, and so the infraction was a warning instead of a game loss. And I was explaining that we're going to issue this warning, here's how we're going to fix it. It might have met the conditions for an upgrade clause, but either way, like, one of the things I asked was, are both of you comfortable with this ruling? And one of the players says, no, not really, but, like, you're the only judge here, so I don't really get to appeal. I'm like, no, you can tell me what you don't like about this ruling, and you and I can have a conversation. You don't get to make me go find somebody else. My ruling will be my ruling, but I'm not just going to say this is my ruling and walk away. McFerguson says, I check everything, I just do it super fast so people think I know everything. Yep. An incredibly valuable skill is knowing how to find things in the documents. Knowing under what section a rule is covered so you can find the exact line, or knowing where in the documents it says that players are allowed to use only bases that they opened or bases from the set that they opened so that you can refer to that just to confirm. Or if the player says, are you sure? You can be like, it says so right here in the text. Knowing how to reference documents is super valuable. So, going back to these required consultations, they're either because the fix can be disruptive and information is revealed and they're hard to undo the fix, or they have a high likelihood of appeal. At some events, it's going to be consult with an L3 plus judge, consult with a team lead. At others, it's going to be check with any other judge. But let's talk about some specifics for a moment. So, sometimes a player will want to take back a play, reversing decisions. This is allowed so long as they've not gained information. The line and definition of gained information is relatively distinct at this point. It's been poked at a lot by a lot of people. And the understanding of what is and is not information is relatively solidly in place. However, just because experienced judges agree on what the line of gained information is, does not mean that less experienced judges can agree, and does not mean that players understand and accept what that line is. Consequently, reversing decisions calls are frequently appealed. And so just having a second person look at it and be like, yes, I agree, information was gained. No, I agree, information was not gained, whatever it is. Just having a second person to gather that communication, because communication can be subjective, getting a second perspective, second opinion on that is super helpful. Plus, it means in the high likelihood that there is an appeal, you can leave the judge that you consulted with at the table as you go get the head judge and explain the issue to them. Card manipulation errors. Some fixes for card manipulation errors involve revealing cards, and most card manipulation error fixes involve moving cards from one hidden zone to another. Whether it's taking a card from resources and putting it into hand, taking a card from hand and putting it into the deck. Once you do that, that's really hard to undo. And so you want to be very confident that your fix is the correct fix, the best fix for the situation. And so again, you want to have that consultation with another judge, just because once you execute that fix, if the players are like, yep, happy with it, let's fix it, and then you fix it and they're like, hey, what about this other thing that we missed that changes the call entirely? Like, well, now we need to take a random card out of your deck, and I don't remember what it was because I wasn't looking, I did look, and then the information went in one ear and out the other. Just having a second person makes it so that the chances that we as judges accidentally damage the game state more is dramatically reduced. In a very similar vein, rewinds and backups as remedies for gameplay disruptions, they can change what information players have access to. They can change the state of the game in some relatively minor ways. However, if they are handled incorrectly, if we forget, for example, that like a unit was defeated during an attack, and we rewind to before the attack, and now that Sentinel is no longer in play, and we just forget about that, and the player's like, oh, cool, there's no Sentinel in play, I'll attack base for lethal and change the outcome of the game entirely. You want to make sure that you have somebody there making sure that nothing is missed, because they have the potential to be disruptive if handled incorrectly or poorly. We want to put in that level of reinforcement. Now, throughout the event, in addition to these calls where you can consult with pretty much experienced floor judges, there are some that need to be brought to the attention of the head judge immediately. There are some responsibilities that are not things that the head judge can delegate, which are handling appeals, which are you get the opinion of the head judge. The head judge can't say, with the asterisk of appeals judges, support judges, assistant head judges, they can't be like, okay, this person can just have my, like, I'm not going to go to an event and say, all right, Tim, you're my floor judge, and whatever you say is fine. Like, Tim doesn't get to be replacement me unless Tim is an assistant head judge. Similarly, as head judge, I am the one who makes disqualifications. Somebody else should not be doing the investigations for me and being like, you should DQ this player, and I just say, okay, bye. I should be doing that investigation myself. And game losses are another one. Those fall into the category of highly disruptive, especially if inaccurately issued. And so for game losses other than tardiness, because tardiness is very objective, it's did you sit down at 0 minutes, 1 minute, 5 minutes, or 10 minutes? Great. I can just look at the clock and tell you what is happening. Other game losses, a player might be like, I don't feel like this meets the requirements for game loss, or I don't understand why it's game loss, or I'm going to appeal game loss, because game losses frequently appealed because players don't like getting them. So, let's talk about how to handle these escalations. First of all, as I've mentioned many, many times, interrupt your head judges. If you have one of these, please, please, please interrupt your head judge. Please do not just stand demurely behind the head judge or like in line of sight hoping senpai will notice you. They will eventually, and they'll be like, hey, what's going on? What do you have for me? And you'll be like, I have an appeal. They'll be like, why did you stand there for 3 minutes? You should have told me. I was talking about which non-traditional lightsaber hilt is the coolest, right? You're going to have to be assertive, and you're going to have to tell somebody in position of authority to pay attention to you. And some people don't like that. And lethal logicality, I'm sorry I put words in your head. Whoops. Anyways, so when you have one of these, you're going to want to, again, be very direct about what's going on. With regards to an appeal, a player does not have to say, I appeal, although they'll frequently say those words. The magic words of I appeal do get through trading card games communities pretty quickly, and players know if you disagree with a ruling, you have the right to appeal. Many head judges included in their opening announcements. And so players will say, I appeal frequently. However, they might say, can I speak with the head judge? Or can you double check that with somebody? Or are you sure? Or I thought it was X. If the player is dissatisfied with their ruling, something that is a key element of handling the appeal well is understanding what they don't like about the ruling. Sometimes they'll just be like, it works differently on Carabast, or my friend told me it worked like this, or I took the lessons on nexus.cascadegames.com and Jonah said it was this. And you can say, actually, Jonah was right when the lesson came out. However, as of last week, there's been a rules update, and so it's changed. Here's that update. And the player's like, okay, cool. If you're able to discover why the player is frustrated, you might be able to address it. Another common one is like, I didn't get enough of a time extension. You gave me 2 minutes. I think it was 3 minutes. You as the floor judge can be like, you know what? It might have been 3 minutes. Have 3 minutes. And the goal isn't to make it so that I don't have to handle appeals. The goal is to make the player experience smoother. And so if you're able to address their concern yourself to their comfort level in 10 seconds instead of 2 minutes of finding me and me saying the exact same thing you could do, would have been great. Sometimes somebody will just be like they just want to see the CR entry or like the database ruling that you know is on the card because you just read it on their phone, and they say, are you sure? If you just turn your phone around and say, see, it says it right here, they'll be like, oh, cool, great. And they will retract the appeal. And so if you're able to identify why the player is dissatisfied and address that concern, that saves you time, it saves the player time, it saves me time, everybody is happier. And if you're not able to address the concern, it lets you more explicitly tell me why the player is appealing. Again, as I've mentioned, I've had a judge come up to me and be like, I have an appeal. I'm like, great, tell me what it is. They walk through a complicated scenario that involves a backup, a lot of decisions being made. They explain everything that's on the board state. And I'm like, okay, cool, what's up? And they're like, well, I gave the player 2 penalty points. Their opponent thinks that they should be receiving 4. And I'm like, okay, the information about the call is nice to know. It's very helpful. Knowing that the information that I cared about was to determine not is the fix correct or what it went wrong, but how many penalty points should this be? That would have changed how I was thinking about that call, and so that would have been very helpful information for me to have the whole time. MightZone12420 says, understanding why they want an escalation lets me know how it needs to be handled, the temperature of the situation as well. Yes, exactly. I have had situations where the floor judge comes to me and they're like, hey, player's appealing because policy doesn't really cover this, and I gave them by the book ruling. I think a deviation here is appropriate. This is what happened. Here's what I think the deviation is. I'm like, cool. Everybody's very relaxed about this. The floor judge is saying you should appeal this. because this is the by the book ruling, but the book doesn't perfectly cover this, or covers this very poorly in this weird circumstance. Or like the player's like, yeah, the player's appealing, they agree with my ruling. However, if I'm right, they lose the game and therefore the match, and so they would like me to be wrong, and so they just wanted another opinion. And those you can also go into very lighthearted, because the player's like, yeah, I expect this to be upheld, but I'm just shooting my shot and seeing what can happen. At other times, it's the two players are about to commit violent crimes. Neither player trusts a word either player is saying. This is a very hostile environment, and me knowing that when I go into it allows me to approach this very differently, with the mindset of let's de-escalate as quickly and as hard as we can. Similarly, while every call has some amount... Corber Beige says, hi, I've never played a TCG before and would like to know what's the best way for me to start learning to play Unlimited, even if no one in my city is playing it. I think getting some starter decks and finding a friend to play. I'm sure that there are probably some people who play webcam. There are a couple of online programs that do a pretty good job of simulating the game. I'm not sure if they have learn to play or demo lobbies there. But in my experience, just like playing games with the decks helps you understand the game so much better than any amount of videos or like education. Like you can go to nexus.cascadegames.com and under lessons there's a whole lot of me talking about how the game functions on a fundamental level. I can tell you all of the rules, but knowing all of the rules doesn't, unless you're somebody who learns by reading the rule book, getting that practical experience is going to be very different. I would also recommend going to your game store. Like if you get the starter decks and you want to learn how to play, get the starter decks, go to your game store and be like, hey, I want to learn to play this game. Can I put up a sign saying learning to play Star Wars Unlimited Wednesday night or Friday night or whenever you're available, and you bring the decks and it's just free to play, and somebody else might show up and be like, hey, I've wanted to learn how to play Star Wars too, nobody plays, I don't have any cards, let's learn together. And so like seeing if you can, because I bet there's somebody in your area who, even if they don't already know how to play, would be interested in learning. I bet a bunch of store employees, even like like if you have the time on a weekday afternoon, which I understand a lot of people don't have, but going into your game store and just being like, hey, do you want to like learn this game with me? And just like, because that makes the store employee better. Even if nobody plays it, they might sell packs, and the store employee being able to explain the game a little bit might help them with their job as well. And so it can be a mutually beneficial sort of thing. Going back to escalating for investigations. While every call has some amount of investigation involved, what I'm referring to as investigations here are investigations into cheating. If you have concerns that a player is cheating or a scenario might need deeper investigation, get a head judge, get them involved. Like with appeals, let them know why you think it might be cheating or why you thought they appealed, and it gives the head judge a foundation to begin with for their investigations and interrogations. Furthermore, like with appeals, stay with the head judge throughout the call. You should not, as the floor judge, you want to stay with the call in case the head judge is like, hey, I have more questions about the initial ruling that you gave, like in an investigation, it's, has the player's story changed at all? Have they said something dramatically different about earlier rather than later? Letting the head judge know if there are major discrepancies or if there's information that has been left out, either accidentally or if you believe intentionally, being there to provide that additional context is incredibly valuable. Furthermore, you being there gives somebody the head judge to talk to who understands what's going on. Just being like, hey, let's talk about this. The player's appealing on this. Okay, let's go over the policy real fast. Having somebody to talk to, I, as a head judge, very frequently use my floor judges as my consultants during these calls. It's like, okay, they're appealing for this reason. I can see why they're appealing. But I believe, per the rules, like, is there anything I'm missing? Can you, double check with me, right? Or an investigation, like, I'm pretty sure this player's being honest. I think they just made a stupid mistake. I don't think that there's anything malicious here. The way that they're expressing themselves, I don't believe there's cheating. Like, here are the things that I'm considering. Are you noticing anything different? Getting that additional perspective, incredibly valuable. Furthermore, if you are a less experienced judge acting as a floor judge, you can learn something from your head judge handling those notes. Or, if you're a more experienced judge and your head judge is less experienced, you're going to be able to provide them even more support and structure. And they'll be like, okay, I'm pretty sure I want a DQ. What do I do now? And you're like, okay, is there any question that you can ask that they can answer in a way that gets you to change your mind now? And if they're like, yeah, I guess if I asked this and they said this, I would change my mind. It's like, okay, maybe you should ask them that question before making that final decision. Okay, now you've determined that you want to disqualify them. Do you want me to go get paperwork? What are you going to tell the player? What are you going to tell their opponent? Like, having that support is incredibly valuable. Mightstone 12420 says, take notes for anything that could be a disqualification. You'll want to refer back to them when you file paperwork. Yep. Taking notes is great. Taking notes for any call, any complicated call, particularly for, like, writing good tournament reports or writing a review of another judge that you worked with. If you work with somebody on a complicated call, having notes for that is incredibly valuable. I strongly encourage having a physical notebook. I find it much, much easier to write notes in a notebook than I do, like, typing them out. Don't know why. I think it's just faster. I don't even know if it's faster, but it feels easier and more concrete in my head. Finally, if you believe a game loss, match loss, or disqualification needs to be issued for something other than tardiness or absence, find a head judge. Even for straightforward issues that seem pretty cut and dry, like a player registered a 40-card deck, which is not legal and the penalty is a game loss, it's best to consult with the head judge. First, these are very impactful penalties and can severely hinder a player's experience at the event. The head judge is likely more experienced, not always, but likely, and might have a deeper understanding of not only the rules and policies, but the underlying philosophy, and may have a different answer that is not a game loss or a match loss. Furthermore, because of the significant impact, players are much more likely to appeal, and so having the head judge already briefed and ready to go can help with efficiency and can help with the player being heard. But that's it for consultations and escalations. Let's go ahead and hit refresh on the policy documents on this tab over here. I'm still seeing 1.3 and 1.2. So maybe not policy documents today, but they should be relatively soon. Mad Dog Max says, I think it's a comfort thing. I learned to prefer my phone. It stays out. I got to dig out the notebook and pen, so it takes me more time. I wear cargo pants or tactical pants for judging, and like the pen and notebook are just as accessible as the phone, and it's one of those nice little notebooks that has like a little bookmark flag in the middle of it, so I can always get to the page that I was writing notes on. I think one of the things that is nice is it lets me, like, I usually carry a couple different colored pens around, blue, red, and black, and so I can, like, make notes in different colors, which is a little bit harder to do on my phone. I have to, like, long press a button or something on my phone to change the color, and that's way too much effort for me. In any case, we're coming up on about an hour and a half total for this broadcast. About a half hour of that at the beginning was tangent. If anybody has any more questions on consultations, escalations, or any tangents they'd like me to go on at the tail end of this broadcast, now's the time. Otherwise, we'll be back on Tuesday with the next lesson, ideally. As I mentioned in the announcement for, I think, yesterday's lesson, over the course of this weekend, or in the middle of the process updating all of the apprentice and level 1 lessons, as well as the level 1 and apprentice exams, which have pretty significant card or question pools. Not every question needs to be adjusted. Most of the stuff, like 90-95% of the content, is up to date, but just reviewing everything, getting it all up to date is going to take a significant amount of time. And I can't publish any of it until the policy updates for Set 5 are live. But I'm probably going to be spending time this weekend updating the lessons and exams. There's going to be a period of time where the exams are not available, just because I don't want folks to be taking exams with weird question pools. Everything should be back up ideally by Monday, with the policy included. Otherwise, I might be doing the policy updates or the question updates on Monday, depending on how long it takes me to edit and re-upload something like 24 lessons. I might not be able to get the Monday lesson out, but I'm still targeting Monday for that lesson. That lesson is studying strategy, which is a relatively straightforward lesson, and I have the script ready for that, or 90% ready for that. So Monday's lesson should be good to go, along with a whole slew of older content being brought back up to speed. That makes, we're just looking at the calendar. So if Monday the 14th is studying strategy, Thursday the 17th is feedback. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that into one lesson. Writing reviews would be the 21st. And then on the 24th, I am in Las Vegas talking to folks for Galactic Championships. But I think we're still looking at, assuming I'm able to get studying strategy out on Monday, which I should be able to do, the last L2 lesson should be coming out on Monday the 25th. And then I'll probably have the L2 exam live end of July, maybe August 1st, maybe August 4th, depending on the timing of things. I'm expecting to talk with our programmer about level 2 endorsements. We're a little bit behind where I wanted to be, but level 2 endorsements should be live ideally by Monday. We're going to have a process where every store that's run a PQ before will be able to endorse judges for level 2, as well as a form for tournament organizers to say, hey, I've run 6 competitive TCG events any game before in my store. Can I have the competitive tournament organizer flag to allow me to endorse level 2 candidates? Ideally, that should be live on Monday, and so folks will be able to start getting level 2 endorsements on Monday, and that'll give folks at least 2, maybe 3 weeks between when endorsements go live and the exam goes live, so we'll have some number of people who are going to be able to take that level 2 exam the day it's released. With that, I'm not seeing any more questions, so I'll see you back here on Tuesday talking about strategy. As always, good luck and have fun.